Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, looking over at your partner, and they're doing this. You'd think to yourself, are they typing in their sleep? Now, how many of you have heard of the phrase work-life balance? Pretty much everybody, right? Now, what do you think that a person that is typing in their sleep is dreaming about? Work, right? They're dreaming about deadlines and how they're gonna close their next big deal, probably typing as quickly as they can so that they can get off work on time to avoid that rush hour traffic on the 405 and get to dinner with their friends. How do I know this? I know this because that person was me. Now, don't get me wrong. I liked my life in Los Angeles. I had a pretty successful career. I even had a window in my office. I worked with incredible people. I had remarkable friendships and a pretty fabulous social life. I made enough money to travel the world. I love adventure, and exploring thrills me. But what I learned over the years was that what truly inspired me about traveling was connecting with people. So I made it my goal each time that I traveled to immerse myself in the culture, to live like a local, and to truly try to experience life and happiness the way they did. On one of my most memorable trips, I traveled to Myanmar, a country that is truly majestic, yet has had much political turmoil. You are expected to walk barefoot throughout the temples and on any sacred sites. I honestly don't recall wearing shoes at all during that trip. The paths in Bagan are dirt roads, and there are very few street names. Not very many people speak English, and Wi-Fi what? Yet I can honestly tell you that I have never felt so connected to other humans and to the earth, maybe ever. Walking around the street markets, watching people laughing, living, and just being happy with what seemed like so little. It was truly inspiring. Then something interesting happened. Every time that I would come back to the US from my trips, I felt a sort of reverse culture shock. When I would come back to my life in Los Angeles, there was a sort of disconnect. I felt something in the back of my mind, in my heart really, that was telling me that I longed for a deeper kind of connection. Throughout my business career, I joined a variety of professional organizations. One in particular focused not only on professional and personal development, but also on philanthropy. We contributed to our community by mentoring kids in low-income areas, by painting and cleaning elementary schools, delivering food boxes, and collecting school supplies. But the most impactful for me was the opportunity to volunteer on Skid Row. My office was in downtown Los Angeles, and it happened to be only a few blocks from Skid Row. So with a couple of steps every day, I began a journey that would change my life forever. The work was incredibly fulfilling, but it was also challenging because it forced me to see the world around me, a world that had been there all along, right in front of my eyes. There are countless problems in this world, and it's very easy to become overwhelmed because we cannot save the children, clean up the oceans, solve world hunger, and save yet another precious species from becoming extinct. So often, we tune it all out and we do nothing. I'm here to tell you today that there is balance in giving back. No one expects you to solve all of the world's problems, but perhaps if you listen to that little voice inside you telling you that there is something that you can do, then perhaps you too would find a different type of happiness. After that trip to Myanmar, I returned home, sold and donated almost everything that I owned, left Los Angeles, and traveled in an RV for 6 months. But that is a story for another time. So fast forward to last year and the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. Historians and scientists will probably be puzzled by this for years to come, don't you think? Well, as you know, that was only the beginning. Soon after, cleaning supplies flew off the shelves, certain food staples went missing, and restaurants had to shut their doors. Food trucks were diverted to food pantries. And in the small town where I lived, storage capacity was reached within days. At the time, I was volunteering at a soup kitchen. And unless I wanted to see perfectly good food in the garbage, I knew I had to do something. So I loaded up my sedan, every nook and cranny, with crates full of organic produce, and I drove to the nearest parking garage looking for shade. It was like I thought that people were just going to be waiting for me like I was a mobile food pantry or something. Well, obviously that was not the case. It was the middle of a particularly warm April day, and I knew I had to get this food distributed or in a refrigerator quickly. So I made many phone calls, sent countless Facebook messages, and I was starting to get worried until a community organizer with a local mutual aid group messaged me back. He mentioned that there was a food distribution event that had started because of the pandemic and said that I should bring the food there. So I did, and when I got there, I was told to just jump in. I've been volunteering with mutual aid ever since. For most of us, COVID meant having to isolate. But while I was researching for this talk, I came across a few articles that referred to the pandemic lockdown as the Great Pause. I would like us to honor this perspective, as it implies that we were given the gift of time, a time to assess, and a time to truly focus on what matters to us. Perhaps even a time to find purpose. Crisis has the ability to bring about creativity, innovation, and collaboration, all components of mutual aid. A movement that you may have heard about, as tens of thousands of mutual aid networks have sprouted up all over the world this past year. They focus on the concept of solidarity, not charity, on cooperation rather than competition, on working together, yet celebrating the skill sets of individuals to help us all thrive. Mutual aid may be new to you, but the concept is legendary. The earliest account that I could find dated back to the summer of 1793, when a brutal yellow fever epidemic hit Philadelphia. Half of the city fled. But the Free African Society, one of the first mutual aid networks in the country, rallied the Black community to offer relief to the sick, to shelter orphans, and transport and bury the dead. These efforts cost many of them their lives. But the work continued past the epidemic as neighbors saw the value in feeding, housing, protecting, and caring for one another. Then throughout the 19th century, Black women were the powerful drivers of mutual aid efforts. They established night schools, daycares, scholarship funds, and they fundraised by holding bake sales, selling crafts, and pooling what little money that they had to boost their communities. I believe that it is human instinct to care for one another. The survival of the human race depends on this symbiotic relationship between our natural resources and each other. The pandemic has brought about many hardships to our community, including great division. Yet it has also brought us the opportunity to rebuild that intangible sense of human connection. A connection that I believe can be built on love and the balance between individuality and collaboration, in which I know deep down we are all craving. Thank you.